My name is Alex Camilleri. I'm the director of Luzzu, playing in the World Cinema Dramatic Competition at the 2021 Sundance Film Festival. Luzzu tells the story of Jesmark, a struggling fisherman on the island of Malta, who's forced to turn his back on generations of tradition and risk everything by entering the world of black market fishing to provide for his wife and newborn baby. Luzzu is not only the first Maltese film to screen at Sundance, it's one of the very few Maltese films that have ever been made. Our tiny island nation has served as a filming location for loads of big-budget Hollywood films over the years, but shooting Luzzu in Malta on a micro-budget felt like we were embarking on something truly fresh in world cinema. Hey, nice background.
Thank you. Hey, Alex.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
First of all, I love Luzzu. Just a wonderful film. I just love it from beginning to end. It was such a emotional experience. It was just, that's what I love about films that aren't American. I just love, they're about people, American films are stories and action, but it was just really a soul fulfilling experience. So bravo. Just wanted to say that up front.
Thanks so much. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. That's amazing.
And Luzzu, it feels so much like a documentary, but it's a balanced drama. There's such realism to it.
Yeah. Something we strived for a lot in the filmmaking, the kind of the mantra from the beginning was, let's make a film that doesn't feel like a film, but almost like reality unfolding, and there happens to be a camera there to capture it. So, there were very conscious choices that we made in how we could impart that feeling to the audience. And there was often sequences of meticulous planning, but then we had to do things to make it feel like it really was just spilling out in front of the camera. But what I will also say is that my background is in documentary, and there is a special kind of feeling that that reality can give us when it even goes beyond what the filmmaker could imagine. And so I wanted to thread in moments that were just purely documentary into this film. And taking one sequence, for example, there's a custom at the beginning of a certain fishing season in Malta where the priest goes around and blesses the boats as a sort of gesture of good luck and safety to the fishermen. And those are all real fishermen on their boats. And we just told them to be on their boats and that the priest was going to come around. The priest is an actor, but they didn't know that. And so they're making the sign of the cross and receiving this blessing. And it's not even clear to me what's reality or what's fiction here.
It's a blurry line there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I enjoyed those moments, and I was glad that we could thread some of those very realistic moments into the film.
Well, your main character, Jess, is in an impossible situation with the legacy of his family, and fishing is so important to him. You can feel him tormented throughout the whole film, but his boat is his birthright. So he's got an almost impossible decision to make.
Yeah, well, that's where the juice is. Dilemma is central to the story. Someone has to be caught between two things without an easy answer. And in our film, we could really epitomize it in a very visual way, which is quite beautiful, which is the Luzzu itself. The boat is synonymous somehow with the Maltese identity. So it could say just a lot about the character, but then become quite broad and I think quite impactful when Maltese audiences get to see it. The boat has been passed down through generations of men who've done the same thing as Jesmark all of these centuries, really. But he's a young man coming of age in a world that's rapidly modernizing and facing headwinds of climate change and EU regulation and unfair market practices that are just squeezing him into this impossible position. This boat that was his connection to his family and to his past now takes on a different kind of meaning. And I'm really drawn to stories about moral dilemmas, and we could put Jesmark really squarely into one here in this very interesting, very specific world of traditional fishing.
Yeah, because centuries of tradition, fishing is rapidly changing, either depletion of the fish and economic development and changes. But Jess is getting it from both sides. Not only is he not making it as a fisherman, but he's getting it from his wife and his mother-in-law, who also see the writing on the wall that it's time to change. But
Mm.
he doesn't adapt to change, does he?
No, and I sympathize him. I sympathize with him. Change is hard, um, because while transforming can be liberating, it inevitably means something has to be forfeited. And becoming a father for him is going to mean changing his identity. But he never expected that it would exact this extraordinary kind of sacrifice. I mean, really, he has to debate whether he can sever himself with everything that's built him up and made him who he is. And I wanted to show that there was great love and great pride in this uh, heritage of fishing. But in order to cut it today, um, he's going to have to find a new definition for himself and to really save his son beyond the literal meaning in the film, but to give him a real shot at life. It's going to mean this family has to change. And I find that those kinds of choices extraordinarily moving, and I could relate to them, even though I didn't know anything about fishing prior to this film. I my parents emigrated from Malta. I grew up here, but I think it's true in most immigrant families. They debate with what to let go of the past in order for their kids to succeed in a new country. You can't take everything with you. And I saw my parents, deal with that in their own way, and saw, and lived through it in my own experience.
And you had a mix of actors and non-actors, which gave the movie such a personal feel. How did they react to the cameras? How did you make them feel comfortable?
Well, that's a great question. I made a very kind of conscious uh, choice to start early. We tried to cast well in advance of making the film, and truthfully, there would be no film without finding the cast. But we had a long runway to work with. We found Jez, Mark, and David, and then I just started kind of shadowing them and making little documentaries as they worked. This was a way for me also to get to see and learn like, how does the fish come out of the water? It's such a simple question. Just what are the tools? How do they do it? I would go out to sea with them, see how it was done, document it for my own education. But just starting with a little camera got them more and more comfortable. They got used to my presence there. It gave me fodder for the script. Like, what does it feel like to watch the sun rise over the sea and you can't see land? What are the smells and what are the sounds? All these things, ultimately have made their way into the film. Beyond those little documentaries that we made, I then started just rehearsing with them in a very loose and improvised way. So I didn't show them a script, but I would describe a scenario that I had in mind for a scene. And I would let Jesmark and David improvise the dialogues. And a lot of times they would come up with way better ideas and would get to the heart of the scene. Sometimes I would have missed it and they would say, oh no, the emotion should be like this. I'll take, for example, there's a scene about 15 minutes into the film where they accidentally catch a swordfish out of season and it pits the two men against each other, and it's a dilemma. One wants to keep it, one wants to throw it away. This was the very first scene I improvised with them in their audition. Actually, it was a scenario that I picked up from my research, talking to other fishermen, and it's one that most fishermen have faced. Running up against the regulations and having a prize fish on board, but you might not be able to keep it, and it could make your week. The family could eat that week because you have this fish. And the way I'd written it was a bit more calm and logical. And then the guys started improvising it, and they were so heated, and it was so angry and so visceral. It was way more interesting. And I just realized that having the non-actors in the film would elevate every aspect of it because they had a emotional connection to it and would imbue every scenario with an authenticity that just couldn't be found otherwise.
And there was a line in the movie where Jez says, "You know how many fish I've thrown back into the sea?" And I think he was saying that for real. I think he was speaking from experience. So, and I think the only time Jez ever smiled is when he had his baby baptized in the movie. The rest of the film, he was just stoic the entire time.
Well, I rather like these characters. I like these kind of cowboy characters, but I will say that it was also kind of the plan in the film that uh, I'm indebted in a way to the sort of transcendental style of filmmaking, and Paul Schrader has written a lot about it. And what you withhold in a film becomes very important because at the end of the film you can release you can let go of the shackles that you've constructed, and that, you know, emotion can really flow to the audience in the end of the film. And Just Mark is this really stoic, very taciturn person. He doesn't share a lot, and he keeps everything inside. He's, you know, his eyes are very watchful, and we can see that a lot is churning inside of his head, but he's not very expressive. And I wanted to reserve that until the very final moments of the film, when finally he has someone to talk to, which is his son. And he tells this really moving story to the son, and you can kind of, the music can swell a little bit. And I like that. I like that moment a lot, because it gives us um, a release, and it gives Jesmark a kind of transformation that, you know, stories should be about transformation. And this is my way of saying that, you know, somehow while he has saved his son has also saved him.
And in our final moments here, Alex, this is your first feature film. So tell me about the first shot on the first day, and what was the last shot on the last day of your boat, of your movie?
I love those questions. So we you know, every filmmaker would love to shoot sequentially, and you learn about guys like Ken Loach who are able to do that. Um, it's really hard on a shoestring budget to shoot sequentially, but we did try to shoot by act, so that we could kind of carry, especially the non-actors, somewhat chronologically through the story, and so that they kind of like the emotional continuity would make some kind of sense, and that they're not jumping around too much. So the very first day of shooting was actually the very first scene in the film, which is often rare, because, you know, films get kind of chopped up on the schedule. And so I think the first shot in the film is probably the first shot that we actually that rolled through the lens, to be honest. And the last shot is set in one of my favorite locations, which was this abattoir, this fish butchering complex. And it was somewhat of a strange experience, because we were shooting kind of late into the night, and this was like an underground lair. But it felt really good that once we completed the shoot, we crawled out of the lair and the sun was rising. So in a way, that location kind of gave us a special experience by virtue of being the last one on our schedule.
Very cool. Well, congratulations on the film. Wonderful experience. You made it to Sundance. Unfortunately, it's virtual this year, you know, but that's an accomplishment of itself. So
I'm so happy it's virtual, because I don't have to go to any parties.
me too. Me too. I'm not a party guy. I'm there just to watch the movies and associate with people like you that are very inspirational. So Alex, congratulations on the film, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate this.